Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. This briefing is being aired live on YouTube. Before we begin, a reminder to maintain audio quality. To please keep your phones on mute until it's time to ask your question. If you're able to do so, please use *6 to mute and unmute your phones. Joining us for today's briefings are Wisconsin Economic Development Secretary Missy Hughes and Department of Natural Resources Secretary Preston Cole. We will begin today's briefings with remarks from Secretary Hughes.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Missy Hughes, Secretary and CEO of the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation. I'm joined today by Department of Natural Resources Secretary Preston Cole. So we'll each open with some brief remarks and then take your questions at the end. And I look forward to speaking with you. So at WEDC, we have and we continue to seek to be a resource for businesses as they navigate the challenges of reopening and regaining momentum in the economy. We have, as many of you know, worked closely with DHS to develop a set of practical, workable guidelines for businesses to use. And we continue to assess the impact, both short-term and long-term, of the pandemic on the nation's economy and the state's economy. I've had personally many conversations directly with business owners and have heard the stresses and the concerns, along with their best estimation about how we're going to weather this storm together. We also continue to assess the economic impact on our tourism industry, our agriculture industry, and many of our other key industries. And one thing I wanted to mention today with regard to that is you may have heard the news about a paper company in Wisconsin Rapids, Verso. They announced today that they are closing its Wisconsin Rapids facility. We'll have about 900 workers laid off towards the end of July. And, you know, this is a particularly difficult time for those employees and for the region and for the paper product industry. We have already been in touch with the company at WEDC and the governor's office. We've been in conversations, and we will continue to have conversations with them to see if we will have, creative solutions for keeping that plant open from what might come into the future. We understand the importance of the paper industry in Wisconsin. It brings in over $18 billion worth of economic impact for the state and employs over 30,000 employees. So it is critical that we continue to watch this situation and work with the company to do the very best that we can to help them get through this situation. I would like to also talk with you about some of the work we're doing at WEDC right now with the intention of helping with these businesses, again, particularly our small businesses that have been incredibly impacted by COVID-19 and helping them through that. In particular, next Monday, we're going to be launching the application process for the We're All In grants. This is a $75 million fund from the CARES Act funding that we're going to deploy to 30,000 businesses in grants of $2,500 or more. And in particular, we're seeking to assist the smaller businesses of Wisconsin, those businesses that are really incredibly important for our community and our quality of life. They are businesses, let me tell you a little bit about the eligibility. They are businesses with 20 employees or less and less than $1 million in revenue. So while $2,500 might not be a lot to some businesses, for these businesses that are faced with buying PPP for their employees or buying inventory so they can reopen their doors, we hope that this grant will assist in their recovery. The application process will be open on June 15th, next Monday. It'll open at 8 a.m. and then it'll be open for a full week until June 21st, Sunday night at 11:59 p.m. It will close. And the idea here really is to help businesses have the time to get their application in. You know, we've all heard about the stresses of different programs where it's a first come, first serve moment. And we're really trying to avoid that. The application process is relatively simple, just a couple documents needed. There is a ton of information about this on our website at wedc.org. And I invite folks to go there. And if there are any further questions, we're prepared to answer those. But again, The application process will begin at 8 a.m. on Monday morning, and as much as we can get the word out to small businesses so they can know about this opportunity and apply for it, that would be ideal. The last thing I would like to just touch on is yesterday, the governor announced the 13 members of the Blue Ribbon Commission on Rural Prosperity. And this was an initiative of the governor announced at the State of the State back in January, along with the creation of the Office of Rural Prosperity at WEDC. So we are very excited to have the members of the commission named. They range from banking to mental health to farming to business. And, you know, the intention is that once this commission is sitting around the table and having discussions about rural Wisconsin, they represent a rural Wisconsin community and really will be able to bring those different perspectives. And then we will conduct a series of listening sessions all around the state and have the chance to hear not only about the impact of COVID-19 on our rural Wisconsin communities, but also, you know, we had challenges before that, we had strengths and opportunities before that, and we want to gather all of that information so that we can all start to strategically think about how we make rural Wisconsin successful, how we make that key part of our state a successful moment in our whole economy, and we'll continue to work towards that into the future. So with that, I will close my remarks along with my tree frog that has joined me here for my presentation and turn it over naturally to the Department of Natural Resources Secretary, Preston Cole.
Thank you, Missy. You know, as a FFA alum, we're in good hands with you working on that rural prosperity along with the governor and the committee. And so, you know, my hope is that the recommendations come out of there can help shape and change rural Wisconsin and agriculture, which we're all excited about. I hold ag, you know, near and dear to my heart as a FFAer. I mean, that's how my parents from Texas and Mississippi started and instilled in me to care for the land and making products from the land. I'm excited to see what come up. Nonetheless, the idea of today with the Department of Natural Resources, we will be resuming camping in the state of Wisconsin. So on Wednesday, June 10th, state parks in the southern region and campground areas will be open to the public, and you'll notice changes. And so those changes are indicative of us making sure that people recreate safely. So when you come to the park, you're going to have that reservation already made. Don't show up and expect that you're going to be able to first come, first serve. Process that we have, you can do your same day reservations, merely go to our website, sign up, and you can get in if those sites are open. But you'll notice that there's going to be a selfless check-in. You'll notice changes in our facilities as it relates to high-touch surfacing. But what's not going to change is the beauty that Wisconsin state parks and campgrounds allow and offer for our visitors. It is unparalleled in the upper Midwest, the type of camping that we have. To our modern camps in the south side of the state of Wisconsin, to our rural forest in the north side, those primitive camping grounds that we have, which are all reservable. And all you have to do is put your fee in the envelope and do that, what I call backcountry packing, your heart's desire. So consequently, again, changes around public safety are going to be in play only because we're worried about folks. We're worried about social distancing, and we have to pay attention. There will be park staff available on each and every site to remind folks about social distancing. And again, reserving your site before you get there is going to be important. Now, you'll notice changes to our restrooms. They'll be cleaned every day. We'll be checking on those periodically. The shower houses are typically made for one person or one family. Those two will be clean. And again, remind yourselves to pay very close attention to social distancing. There'll also be changes to our water fountain. So once you get on our property, you will typically see these high touch surfaces for water fountain. Well, we're capping all of those. And so if you're going to get water from that fountain, bring a jug, bring your flask, so we can keep people from touching those high touch surfaces. Come with your firewood. Be prepared when you come. And so getting firewood about 10 miles outside of state park is going to be important because we still have invasive species that impact Wisconsin's forests. Emerald ash borer and gypsy moth are still on the landscape. If you can buy your firewood prior to arriving on property, that would be great. Capacity closures. Why, of course. If in fact the numbers at parks that have day use areas and campgrounds, we have to pay very close attention to the number that enter that property. There may be times of the day that you will see the gate close and then reopen, allow folks to recreate without coming in close contact with each other. Those gates will then be reopened. We typically do that around the state, and quite frankly, we did it this weekend on the family-free weekend around the state. So there were parks like Devil's Lake State Park, there were parks like Mirror Lake that we had to close for an hour or so to let folks recreate, leave, and offer new opportunities for folks to enter the park. Volunteers won't be on site. Our camp hosts usually welcome campers to their location. Many of our camp hosts were retired individuals. We thought it best that, senior citizens, not come in close contact if they could avoid it with campers. And again, we want folks to recreate, within their own family, close to your home, and come prepared. So the idea that we want to tell you is know before you go. Concessions won't be open, so you got to bring your bug spray. You got to bring, of course, enough food to eat, Band-Aids, bandages, and then get out and recreate. Make sure that you have things for sore knees and sore feet, acetaminophen or whatever your painkiller of choice is, because I expect for each and every visitor to go to sleeping and resting after a full day of activity on our properties throughout the state. I continue to be excited about what it means for Wisconsinites and people new to Wisconsin to help reconcile the drama that we are going through as a nation. Again, find a park close to you, recreate with your family. The doors will be open, our hearts will be open. Again, pay very close attention. Again, we will close down beaches if people are out of bounds and not paying attention to, and trailheads, and if you're not paying attention to social distancing, we have to take necessary measures to protect public safety. And at the same time, you can enjoy the outdoors. I'm going to turn it back over to our moderator and answer any questions that folks may have.
Thank you, Secretary Cole. At this time, we will now take your questions. As a reminder to maintain audio quality, please keep your phones on mute until it's time to ask your question. Also, in the interest of time, only one question per reporter per media outlet. We will begin with Jonathan Nizer with NBC 26 in Green Bay.
Thank you for taking the call today. I'm not sure if the WEDC guidance covers this type of scenario, but we're hearing from a lot of folks about being able to visit their loved ones in nursing homes. Is there any guidance coming from the state on any changes on how facilities are able to possibly start accommodating that?
From WEDC's perspective, we do not have a guideline on nursing homes. Nursing homes have obviously been a real challenge in the face of the larger challenge that we're all working with the COVID-19 crisis. I would imagine that the DHS is working closely with the nursing homes to assure safety as they start to think about allowing visitors and allowing folks to go in and see their loved ones. I know that our veteran homes continue to wrestle with assuring the safety of their clients and their staff. And so I think we will continue to see that evolve and see information come out about that.
Thank you. We'll go next to Mark Leland with WLUK-TV in Green Bay.
Yes, it's for the DNR Secretary. I'm wondering, you mentioned the campgrounds open. I might have missed it. I thought you said in the southern part of the state. I'm wondering the northern part of the state, and not just the campgrounds, but at these facilities, when will the concessions open? Is there a plan for that? When will all the bathrooms and facilities be open at the different parks throughout the state?
Thank you for that. Bathrooms are all open throughout the state. and campgrounds are open throughout the state. There are about 3 properties that are closed. And the reason that they are closed, there are unique circumstances that Parfrey's Glen has that you can't social distance, because there's some wetlands and there's some natural ecosystems there that people have to be in close proximity to each other to see. So state parks, again, are open throughout the state. Camping is open in many of our locations, not throughout the state. And so if you got a question, merely go to our website and check.
We'll move on to Scott Bauer with the Associated Press.
Hi, thanks for doing this call today. For Secretary Hughes, does WEDC have any tally or estimations how many Wisconsin businesses may because of this outbreak?
Scott, you broke up a little bit for me, but I think you were asking the impact on Wisconsin businesses and what we anticipate to see as far as closures. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so we've been following the data from 3 different viewpoints. One is from almost daily consumer transaction data from Oshkosh. UW Oshkosh has done a survey of businesses all around the state, and then my regional economic development directors all around the state have been kind of eyes on the ground to help me understand the impact. And one of the challenges that we see is, as businesses closed back in March, we're now looking for them to reopen. And one of the ways that we're tracking that is to see if they start having credit card transactions again. It seems as simple as that, but that's really, a good way to track whether or not a business is coming online. And in reviewing that data, it does appear that there continues to be an uptick of businesses that are coming back with their credit card transactions, and we're continuing to see those businesses reopen. I have seen numbers, anywhere from 20 to 30% anticipated closures, and I think that really tied into the duration of the safer at home order, and then continuing that. Lots of businesses that I have talked to could withstand a initial wave of being closed, but are very concerned about continuing, a potential hot spot or a surge in the future that would be really hard to have an impact on. And that's why it's critically important that we all continue to think about, as Secretary Cole pointed out, the social distancing and the hand washing and wearing masks, because this is all going to be critical for regaining momentum in our economy. And if these small businesses are asked to endure another impact of closing, or even just consumer confidence, keeping consumers at home, keeping employees at home, we're going to see more and more closures. But, for right now, we're keeping an eye on that data to understand the impact and looking at different main streets across the state and understanding what's happening there. But it's really critically important that we continue to have these behaviors that limit the spread of the virus so that we can regain momentum in our economy.
And for our moderator, I just wanted to make sure that folks knew that Partree, Hewitt's Nest, Parfrey's Glen, the Dells of the Wisconsin River, and Gibraltar Rock are those state natural areas that'll be closed because they offer that unique ecosystem where social distancing can't occur. Just wanted to clean that up.
Thank you, Secretary. We'll go next to Stephanie Hoff with WisPolitics.com.
Good afternoon, and thanks for holding this call. My question is for Secretary Cole. Some agriculture business groups fear that high-capacity well regulations are going to increase because of Attorney General Call's decision on that and the DNR's response to that last week. What are your plans for high-capacity wells? Is there going to be increased regulation?
Well, again, our approach is to follow what the Supreme Court has told us to do as it relates to, what they agreed to previously. And of course, the previous Attorney General reversed that. The new Attorney General Call, says that the DNR has an obligation, if not a duty, to pay very close attention to the science. So staff will be paying very close attention to the science. Now, this has to be indisputable science relative to impacts on headwaters, drinking waters, wetlands. And so our approach is to be open, honest, and transparent as it relates to that, work with the permittees and allow them to make a case. And remember, I think that, there are well over 700 that had previously gone through over the last, since 2016. And we're not looking backwards at those. We're just going to pay very close attention to any impacts that impact the headwaters of, the Plover River, and folks in those communities, again, tend to worry about that. And so we're going to do the balancing act of, again, following the science around water and following the science around, these permits. And so we'll work openly and honestly with folks who want to put permits in.
We go now to Stephanie Fryer with WISC TV in Madison. As a reminder, *6 to unmute your line, Stephanie. We will move on to Taj Mahal with NBC 15 in Madison. Again, *6 to unmute your line. We will move to Chris Hubich with the Wisconsin State Journal.
Hi, Secretary Cole. Just wondering, with the previous reopening of parks, have there been any problems? You mentioned a couple of times that parks had to be closed, but have there been any issues with people not following the guidance?
Thank you for the question. And of course, every now and then, this weekend, at the fun-free weekend, how we manage, the distancing and assist folks with social distancing is again paying very close attention to how many people are on property. And that's why we feather folks who are able to park, we feather folks who are walking in. And so I'm happy to report there were little to no social distancing issues at some of our most popular parks. There were some temporary closures, and that's getting ahead of having too many people on property. And again, if folks aren't paying attention, we have a responsibility to share that with them. And if folks really aren't paying attention, those closures will be in play for a longer period of time. We may have to close trailheads. We may have to close beaches ahead of time. And so that folks don't recreate at those locations if we find individuals are, again, run amok as it relates to social distancing. So we pay very close attention. A lot of people are on the grounds watching. And of course, at Devil's Lake, we saw people venturing deeper into the park that, normally they wouldn't go that deep in. And of course, it's 9,300 acres of parkland. There is enough parkland to see while you're there and practice social distancing. So we're going to lean in heavily on the smart Wisconsinites, smart visitors to our state parks to manage themselves and stay away at least 6 feet from people that not in your party.
Our next question will come from Eric Gunn with Wisconsin Examiner.
Thank you for taking this question. As we all know, the state has been foreclosed from setting statewide requirements, but it's also clear that businesses around the state are all over the map. Some of them are paying very close attention, requiring masks and so on, and others not so much. At this point, Secretary Hughes, what leverage does the state have to ensure public safety where businesses are not following the recommendations and guidelines for public health?
Well, the thing I'd like to say first and foremost is, by and large, and very much by and large, the businesses that I have visited with, that I have talked to, and those in my local community that I have been in are actually being very cautious and very conscientious about the safety of their employees and their customers. They are engaging in social distancing. They have tape marked down on their floors. Restaurants are reopening with social distancing their tables and working very hard to make sure that their customers feel safe. And, you know, I think the strongest thing that the state can do is remind businesses that the customer is always right. And I have seen the businesses in Wisconsin be very aware that if they have a customer who comes in and does not feel like the business has taken into account their safety, that they would be very concerned about losing that customer's future business. And, you know, the larger companies that I have visited and worked with, even before the COVID-19 crisis came about, were very, very concerned about safety. We have a state that has manufacturing and the paper industry, as I mentioned earlier, all of which that have taken up the safety of their employees in a very strong and vibrant way. And I have seen that continue with the adoption by many of these businesses of 50 or 60 pages worth of guidelines on how to make sure on their factory floors and in their office spaces, they are doing everything they can to keep their employees safe. We continue to talk with businesses. Businesses are helping us evolve our guidelines and working with DHS to think about things like their safety of their workers, to make sure that they're doing what they can to avoid hotspots. We've had lots of inquiries from businesses about, can we do testing in our place of business? How do we make that work? So there is actually, you know, while we have media reports and of course pictures of some places where we don't have social distancing happening, very much so, the majority of businesses are very concerned about making sure that their customers feel safe, their employees feel safe, and that they are helping their community stay safe.
Our last question will come from Denise Lockwood with Racine County Eye. As a reminder, *6 to unmute your line. With that, that will conclude today's briefing. You can find more information on the COVID-19 and outbreaks and investigations pages on the DHS website, as well as the websites of the Governor's Office, Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, and the Department of Natural Resources. Thank you for joining us and have a good afternoon.